Oh man, she did what? Why is the government always lying? That's not your fault. That was your mother's job. I know it sucks. It's hard, but it's fair. If we don't get our heads out of our collective asses, we're gonna be lost in the sauce. You knew he was sorry when you met him at DHS. Come on, baby girl. What's the solution? Look, I know I'm fucked up.
Welcome to the Angry Nerd Podcast. My name is Arshawn Wade, aka the Angry Nerd. The Angry Nerd Podcast brought to you by some bad life choices and a few shattered dreams. The Angry Nerd Podcast is taped live in front of a Facebook audience. The Angry Nerd Podcast is sponsored by the money that my wife gives me from my SSI check, some chick named Joni, and proceeds from listeners like you. If you want to be one of those listeners that contributes to the production getting better and better every week, scurry on over to Cash App, drop some of those twos and fews. It's $ The Angry Nerd if you want to support the channel. Jumping right into a couple of hot topics. So, and I'm not gonna act like I'm one of those people who's too good for what is that thing? The stimulus check that Trump passed out. I'm not gonna act like that. But sources say that we will be receiving another stimulus check. Those people that qualify. So shout out to the stimulus checks going out. And I haven't heard exactly how much it was going to be because one of those guys, I forget, one of those senators, I ain't real big into politicians, but he put Donald Trump on the spot and he asked him specifically how much it was going to be. And according to Mr. Trump, it's going to be really good. It's going to be generous. It's going to be very generous. It's going to be the best stimulus package that anyone's ever seen. Everything, according to Donald J. Trump, everything is the best that anyone's ever seen. We got a plan. It's a good plan. It's a really good plan. It's the best plan that anybody's ever seen. Next question. So that is something to look forward to amidst the COVID-19 and people who've been displaced from work due to the coronavirus and everything like that. Although I will say, like I said the first time, although we are happy to have it, nobody's turning it down. Nobody's sending the check back. For $1,200 is a drop in the bucket to a working man. I promise you, it ain't even gonna take care of the rent and the car payment. So $1,200 after 3 months of not being at work, it's actually quite kind of a joke. But you know, like I said, nobody's gonna turn that down. What else we got going on in the news? Apparently, Terry Crews is back in the hot seat on Black Twitter. I don't call it Black Twitter. That's what it's called. Terry Crews made a comment that he didn't want the energy from the Black Lives Matter movement to transform into Black Lives Better, meaning that we think that we're better or something crazy like that. And I really hate when people do things like that because it diminishes the movement. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, we don't have to agree with every single thing, but let's maintain a modicum of solidarity. You know what I mean? Because it's like we do have a purpose. We do have a reason for the protests. We do have a method to the madness. You know, there are cooler heads out there who are speaking intelligently and trying to get the message to the right people. We want justice. We want equality. We want the police to get off the working man's back. That's what we want. You know what I mean? There are people who are intelligent enough to go out there and speak to the right people and affect some positive change. And what we don't want is to have the movement to be co-opted by people who have a platform and an audience to bastardize the movement. You know what I mean? So I can understand Willie D, and I really like anything that Willie D says. For this simple fact, anybody who's a fan of the Ghetto Boys or listen to any of their music, he is a genius because he rhymed the word paranoid and sword. I take my gourds everywhere because I'm paranoid. I live by the sword. That was amazing. Only a true country down south wordsmith could make the word paranoid and sword rhyme. And it's because of that I listen to pretty much anything Willie D has to say. But all jokes aside, he did make a very valid point. It's no time to be straddling the fence or faltering on where you stand. You know what I mean? It's either you're for the movement or just fall back. You know what I mean? I want to take this time in the show to give a special shout out to a few people. One is my DJ Platinum Wax. He has a recording company in Southern Arkansas called Young Black Guys Records, and he is responsible for my intro music. And when you guys listen on Spotify, Podbean, or YouTube, you will hear that music, and that is a product of DJ Platinum Wax. Also, if you go on Spotify, YouTube, or Podbean, you will see graphics. The Angry Nerd graphics, the Angry Nerd logo, it was created by Dylan Brackley over at Savage Hippie. And while I'm shouting out my man Dylan Brackley, I want to take this time to say, you know, you have those Facebook friends who you are like super cool with. Y'all laugh at each other's posts and you guys like each other's stuff. Lo and behold, you get to hang out in real life. That rarely happens. But I had the distinct honor, privilege, and pleasure to hang out with the guys at Savage Hippie this past weekend at their photo shoot. And I want to say thank you, Dylan Brackley and Tim McDonough. And I may say your name wrong, Tim. I'm not entirely sure. It's like the GH makes the F. I'm not sure. But you know, it's all love, man. And I really appreciate you guys. And I'm excited to see how that all turned out. But jumping into tonight's topic, I plan to ruffle a couple of feathers because I want to kind of champion the cause for a group of people who get forgot about all the time. And they kind of get overlooked and they get disrespected. And you never really get a chance to earn your way back to society after you've gotten what we'll call an F on your report card. And that F, I mean felony. Once you get a felony on your record, it's like you're no longer black or white or Mexican or anything. You belong to a whole new race of people, felons. And felons are very underrepresented. It doesn't matter if you go serve your entire sentence. They call it a debt to society. I transgressed against the laws of society and I had to pay tribute to the state or the country, depending on whether it's a state case or a federal case. There's a difference. And I have to go down there and I have to pay my debt with years in prison or jail or probation or whatever the case may be. But whenever I get done paying that debt, an employer can ask me, am I a felon? For the rest of my life, even though I've already served my time, even though I've already paid that debt. It doesn't matter if you were 18, 19, 20, they'll tell you, oh, well, 7 years and 10 years. No, that follows you for the rest of your life, and it's not fair. Now, the way that the United States Constitution frames it, you can't be discriminated against for being a felon. But it is also a crime not to divulge your felonious status if you're asked. I don't know how that works. It's like they put one law in there to protect us after we have, I say us because yes, the Angry Nerd is the felon. And it's like they put one law in there to protect us and there's another one to screw us over. You know, because on one hand, you say that an employer can't discriminate against us. And the law is written in a real funny way. He can ask me and he can decide not to hire me as long as he hasn't done it before he's made an offer on the job. And it's a real dirty game the way that laws and policies are written, because it's like those of us who come from the streets, those of us who come from the urban background, it sounds like good game. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they made an escape hatch for themselves. It sounds like they're doing something moral and decent. And then in the very next sentence, it's like, yeah, but here's where we put the boot in your tail. You know, and I just don't think that it's fair for a person to pay for their entire life for one mistake. Hell, 3 or 4 mistakes. It's like if you said that this mistake costs this amount of time in jail or prison or on probation, it's like after that's done, it's over. right? It seems like after I've proven that I'm no longer going to conduct myself that way, that I should be able to buy my way back. Negative behavior cost me my freedom and my privileges in this country. So it would seem that positive behavior would win it back. And that's not how it works. It's not how it works at all. And it's a real dirty game. But I wanted you to see something, because the United States is when it comes to the penal institution in the United States, is very, very different from other places in the world. And here are a couple of facts. I don't want to just be talking out of the side of my neck. Most people that know me know I can talk. And but I want to give you some facts. An estimated 1.1 million persons were convicted of felonies in the United States last year. Let that sink in. Sit on that for a second. 1.1 million people were convicted of felonies last year. 94% of those people pled guilty. Now this is where I have to segue and do a little bit of talking, because let me make you understand something. They give you what's called and different places call it different things, a suspended imposition of sentence or a deferred sentence. All it says to a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid like myself at the time is, I'm not going to jail today. Yeah, just sign this paper right here for a 5-year suspended sentence. See, he'll give you that because on the record, it counts as a conviction. 18, 19-year-old kid has no idea that he has just said, I'm a felon. And oftentimes, these cases that we take these suspended sentences and these deferred sentences on are bogus. But we're afraid because it's just us, little ignorant us, in the courtroom all by ourselves a lot of time, because let's face it, most of us, especially if you come from the low income communities, most of us don't have the money to get a defense attorney. We're standing in there with a public defender who gets paid $16 an hour, and and all public defenders say this is what they teach them in law school. Public defenders, this is a real good deal. This is probably the best deal you're going to get. You better take it. And they have you flush your life down the drains, because what they don't tell you is in the very, very small print at the bottom of the page that you just signed was a portion that says that coming in contact with law enforcement is a violation of that suspended sentence. What does that mean, Arshawn? It means that if you get caught jaywalking, if you get pulled over because you had a tail light out, technically, that's grounds to suspend your suspended sentence. Excuse me, to reinstate your suspended imposition of sentence. What that means is that busted tail light can get you sent to prison for that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 year suspended sentence that you signed. That's all that it takes. So here's the kicker. You get caught with that busted tail light, and then you go to court and the judge says, hey, you can take 2 years in prison today, or we can PTR you. It's called petition to revoke, where the prosecutor will petition the courts to revoke your suspended imposition of sentence. So basically, you're in a Mexican standoff. Take the 2 years over here, or roll the dice and go to PTR court, or in other states they call it apt to accelerate. They apply to the courts to accelerate your suspended imposition of sentence, which is SIS, to actual time in jail or prison. And you're standing there, you're like, if I roll the dice, I could get 5 years plus whatever time this busted taillight carries. That's what you're faced with. So the guy says, well, take the 2 years and we'll take that 5 off the table. Also ignorant, sure, I'll take it. I'll take the 2 years. I'll go to jail. In Arkansas, on a crime like that, you have to do about 4 to 6 months. 4 to 6 months, it's no big deal. I'll eat bad food and read books for 4 to 6 months, no big deal. What they don't tell you is that that 5 years that you had stays on a shelf. The 2 years that you just went down, stacked on top of the 5, calling it 7. So you go 4 or 6 months and you come back out and you smoke some marijuana at the Super Bowl. You go see a parole officer and you have a dirty UA. No, not just the 2 years, there's 5 on the shelf. So this time when you go to court, they say, hey man, you have 7 years of exposure on that sentence that you took. And you know what they do then? But if you take this too, it's a dirty game, man. If you take this 2 years, we'll take that off. We'll take that off the table and you just go to jail for 2 years. And you know what happens when you get out after those 4 to 6 months? That original 7 is on the shelf. That 2 that you just took stacks on top. If you mess up while you're on parole, next time you have 9 years hanging over your head. And this vicious cycle continues and continues and continues until you're looking at 40 or 50 years in prison. And that's when they go ahead and drop the hammer. Poor people don't know this. There are poor people every single day in this country going down to the courthouse because the courthouse is no longer a place for robbers and murderers and rapers. No, they will take regular, everyday citizens and they will put them in jail with killers and murderers and rapers and robbers. They will do this and they do it every single day. Here's something that's very noteworthy. The United States of America only makes up about 4.5% of the world's population. Yet, we own 25% of the world's prisoners. Let that sink in for just a second. Let me run those numbers by you again. This country makes up 4.5%, less than 5% of the world's population. But this country has 25% of the world's prisoners. Something's terribly wrong, disturbingly wrong with that. And people oftentimes will hear me go down the bunny trail and talk about capitalism, how capitalism creates criminals. They scared us away from reading books about anarchism and learning about anarchy and things like that. They scared us away from that by bastardizing the word. But when you read these books by Emma Goldman and Marx, and you read all these different texts, you realize capitalism created all of this drama. Capitalism created the criminals. And I heard, what's his name? The one running now, Biden. I heard him say, what was that, 94, 96? I know that we created them. Maybe we helped create these criminals, but I don't want them on the streets. So they send these people that they created. The byproduct of capitalism is criminality. And they know that. But what do they do? But what do? They put you in jail. They know that another one of the byproducts of this country is addiction. What do? They put you in jail. Where are they giving government funding for drug treatment programs? Prisons. 2014, they stopped giving these private institutions out here funding. Now the only places getting government funding for alcohol and drug treatment are penal institutions. Starting to get the picture here? That's what they're all about. Couple more facts. Let me read a couple more facts for you. 7 in 10 convicted felons were sentenced to either prison or jail. And these prison sentences averaged almost 5 years. So about the average prison or jail sentence, it's going to be 5 years. Now, let me make one thing clear. There is a clear distinction between criminals, real criminals, and regular citizens. And anybody who's ever met a real criminal, they know the difference. Because real criminals don't care about jail. They're not messed up about, not being there for the kids at Christmas and things like that. There is something inherently wrong with the people who are real criminals. But I will tell you, as someone who has been incarcerated before, the real criminals are few, far, and in between. Most people run afoul of the law. and just don't have the money to pay for an attorney and end up getting railroaded and going to jail and ultimately going to prison. And something that I found very noteworthy and disturbing is that they will tell you that ignorance of the law is no defense. So it is our responsibility as United States citizens to know the law. In other words, we all have to be part-time attorneys. Excuse me. Because how else could we know this stuff? Have you ever read court documents? It's written in a weird, what they call the King's English. It's written in a real weird way. Almost like the King James Version of the Bible. It's like, it reads so weird, so strange. All I know is I'm not going to jail. Here, I'll sign it. And day in, day out, people are signing their lives away. And this says in excess of 5 years or more. Here's another fun fact. The number of felony convictions increased 37% since 1990. 37%. These numbers are staggering, folks. 3% of the total U.S. 3% of the total U.S. population has served time in prison. 3% of the population has been to prison. And instead of reform, instead of some type of program, instead of some type of outlet for these guys, they keep sticking them in this box. And I'll tell you, as someone who's been in a cell before, it doesn't do you any good. And for, not that I'm a super genius, but for anybody with a level of intelligence, it is a daily struggle to hold on to your humanity in a place like that. To not conform to the way that these men have been conditioned to conduct themselves. It's heartbreaking. It's disheartening. It's sad, and it's downright wrong. You know, oftentimes these people, 80% of the people in jails and prisons are drug related, be it drug addict or drug dealers. You know, so we need some sort of drug rehab. We need some sort of drug treatment. We're not putting our money in place to help people. That's not what the government's doing. They're building more jails. They're building more prisons. And the thing about it that bothers me is, I honestly don't have a problem with jail and prison. I believe it has its place. Like I said, for these people who perform these heinous acts. You know, we don't want a bunch of rapers and murderers and robbers running around the street. These people are very dangerous. But tax crimes, traffic violations. I saw a guy go to jail for improper lane changing on a bike. That's just ridiculous. Child support. You know, they have criminalized just normal, regular, everyday mistakes. They have criminalized it. And that's why we have a problem with overcrowding in prison, because you got regular, everyday people getting locked away for years at a time. You got people, the incident with, what's his name? Rashard Brooks? Was that his name? The guy who fell asleep in Wendy's? Come on, man. You put that guy in the back of this car. You take him to jail. You let him dry out. You don't put him in jail. I know where I grew up in Fort Smith, they had a drunk tank. They would take guys, put them in there for 6, 8, 12 hours, and then cut them loose. You know, serving and protecting. But when these people are viewed as points on the scoreboard, because that's what it is, people, points on the scoreboard. They want more felons. They want to hand out more felony convictions. Because if you play the game right in this country and you believe in voting and everything that our brothers, I see my man Jason Letterfield in the chat. People like that good brother who have served this country, who have gone to to the army and gone into the military to protect this country. When you got people like that, you know what I'm saying? Who have gone and fought for our country and who play the game fair and who try to live righteously. When you got guys who have done that, and you look at it and you see this, they're trying to take away your rights. They're trying to make sure that you're not allowed to vote, that you're not allowed to have a gun. Why is it that I can't ever get my right to vote back? I already gave you guys what you wanted. You wanted me to go to your jail and do a number of days or months or years or whatever the case may have been, but I still can't have a gun. You wanted me to, and it's been years, but for the rest of my life, these rights are gone. You want us to stay out of jail and stay out of prisons, but you allow employers to ask us, have you ever committed a felony? And I'm not one of those people who's all the way to the left or all the way to the right. I know that we live in the gray. Trust me, I don't want someone who's been convicted of pedophilia to drive the kids' bus to school in the morning. You know what I mean? I don't want Uncle Touch Me, Feel Me to be watching the kids at the daycare. You know, I get that. There are certain instances, let's not be silly about this. There are certain instances where that question should be brought up. What were you put in jail for? What were you convicted of? But to ask that question at a lumber yard, to ask that question at a concrete factory, at a paper mill, it just seems to be unreasonable. Because how are these people ever going to get their lives together if they're going to carry this dirty mark with them everywhere that they go? How are they ever going to reintegrate to society? How will they ever be reacclimated to society if society, everywhere that they go, society says, F you? How is that ever going to happen? And don't get me wrong, I know there are a lot of people who are extreme left, extreme right. There's some people who are like, hey buddy, he should never did all that, man. You know, nobody told him to sell that crack cocaine. Ain't nobody told that boy to do that. You know, I've been doing the right thing my whole life, you know. Hey, so let me tell you what I found out, people. All it takes is one mistake. And that boy in prison is your son. That boy in prison is your nephew. It's your husband. It's your son. That's your people. All it takes is one screw up. People who live their whole lives. I've met probably the best human being that I've ever met in my life in prison. I met him in prison. He was a wonderful person. A wonderful person. He was a school teacher and he was a counselor and he was a book dealer. He was just a magnificent person, had traveled the world, and at 42 years old, he caught his wife in bed with another man and blew him away. And he's serving double life. And I was blown away when he told me that, because I had to ask, because I've never seen him without a smile on his face. He's a devout Buddhist. He's been locked away for 20 some odd years. And when he told me that, I said, wow, one mistake like that, one time you lost your stuff. This is a guy who had never been in any kind of situation in his whole life. He's been a professional, a productive member of society for 40 some odd years. The one time he screws up, his life is gone. His life is gone. And I tell you, in the history of my life, and I've met people all over the country, and I have never met a better person than that man. He finds the good in every single person. We both worked as drug counselors in prison. And we had some tough cases come through, and I would be like, hey, throw this guy back. I don't mind sharing with you. Arshawn isn't that compassionate. I'm like, look, this guy, there's no sense in us wasting our time with this guy. His name was Walter. Old Walt would always say, hey, everybody's got some redeeming qualities about them. And it didn't matter how crappy the guy was, he would find that and he would pull it out of him. And it always makes me sad when I think about probably the best human being in the world is serving double life down in Grady, Arkansas. This is a real problem. It's a real problem, and I know that there are a lot of movements going on right now. I know that there's a lot of stuff going on with COVID-19. There's a lot of stuff going on with Black Lives Matter and, you know, police brutality. And this isn't to diminish any of that. This isn't saying that any of that's not important or to draw energy away from that. But there are some subsects of our society that get swept under the rug. Addicts and alcoholics, convicted felons. These are people who get swept under the rug as, you know, cast-offs. And the handfuls of us that figure out a way to eke out a living in this life, you know, we are the exceptions. And I say we because I am one of those exceptions. I am very aware that not everybody gets out of jail and gets a job and sticks with it and moves up through the ranks and becomes a supervisor and provides a life for their family. Everyone doesn't do that. That's not reality for everybody. But it should be. And there should be programs in place to help these guys. I didn't meet one person while I was working as a drug counselor in prison. I didn't meet one guy who didn't come from a broken family or a jacked up background. I didn't meet not one. Every single guy that I talked to, that I interviewed, that I worked with, they came from a shattered background. If they had parents at all, they were drug addicts or they were abusers. I couldn't tell you the amount of horror stories that I heard. And you look at the guy after you talk to him and you're like, how could you not end up in prison? How could you not end up breaking the law? And I know the society has a lot of us calloused, has a lot of us hardened. Screw them. They made their choice. It's their choice. I've heard people say that about the disease of addiction. And listen, some people, they just don't have the information. They don't have the intelligence in that field yet. Some people just don't know. They'll tell you, oh, it's their choice. Nobody told him to pick up that gun. Being a fan of the 90s era rap, I remember Warren G saying, who's the real victim? Can you answer that? The brother's jacking or the fool getting jacked. You know, and that really makes you think, man. How low has a man gotten when he gets a gun and decides to go do a robbery? How low has a person really gotten in themselves to where they decide to go hang out with Nino Brown and get a package and start selling drugs? Because we all grew up hearing grandma or somebody in the neighborhood saying that that's wrong, that ain't the right way to do it, that's not okay. We all grew up hearing things like that, so we all knew that that wasn't right. But what level of desperation has to be visited upon a person to have them make a decision like that? And I will tell you, as someone who has lived a sordid lifestyle, I couldn't imagine being in some of the situations that I've been in the past today. I think about it sometimes and I say, man, I couldn't imagine living like that again. And I thank God, I thank the ancestors that I'm not living like that anymore. But it's come to the point of the show for my fans out there in Spotify, Podbean, and YouTube world, where I go to the Facebook Live and see if we got some questions or some comments that we want to read. So let's check it out. Go back to the top where I see smiley faces because that means somebody was talking trash. Oh, and while I'm reading these, I want to take I want to take special time out to thank my special guests last week, the fellas over there at Big Game ENT, my man Tony Rhymes, D-Baby, and Jay Riz. Shout out to you guys, man. I love you, brothers. Much success to you guys. Man, I'm always rooting for you. I don't care. Keep putting your content out. Keep putting your music out. And you're going to get a thumbs up from this kid right here, man. Every single post, I'm there, man. I'm shouting you guys out. I'm big upping you guys, man. I'm supporting the movement. Okay, what we got? Kevin Palmer says, felons should be able to run for political office. Oh, wow. Hey, you know what, Kevin? I 100% agree. I feel like who better than somebody who has been on both sides of the law, you know? Now, mind you, we don't want the curbside strangler or the blue light rapist, you know, running for public office. And you see, that's where the lines of discrimination get muddled, because there are certain things that we can all kind of agree on that are inherently wrong. Raping, robbing, you know, killing, touching kids, things like that. We can all agree that we don't want those things happening. But failure to register your vehicle, I don't think anybody should go to jail for that. I did when I was 18. First time I got taken downtown, it was for failure to register. A 1985 Ford LTD. It was Dookie Brown, and for some strange reason, I put yellow tinted windows on there. Sometimes you do crazy stuff when you're a youngster. Some of the dopest, Aaron Vincent says, some of the dopest cats in the world have the biggest hearts are felons. I agree 100%, Aaron. So I said this, and see, now you're going to get me talking about church people, because I said this before. I said I would rather a person never talk about that Jesus stuff or talk about that Bible stuff and and curse and talk crazy and have a good heart than to act as if you're holier than thou, but you treat people like crap. You know what I mean? Some of the very best people that I've met have been ex-cons, have been people with nose rings and tattoos and mohawks. Some of the very best people that I have met, they don't wear suits and stand up in the pulpit and preach from a raggedy book. Oh, my man said, hold on, wait, I can't skip past that. Aaron Vincent said, I'm about to get that hoverboard with my stimulus payment. Hey, big ups to you, because it ain't going to be enough money to do much else, buddy. This is not a free country. And it's not. Well, what you have to understand is we don't have freedom in this country. We have liberty. And I'm a big fan of words, because words have meaning. Words have power. There's a difference between freedom and liberty. See, in my house, I have freedom. I do what I want to do around here. You know, I say curse words, and, you know, I eat ice cream for dinner if I want to. My kids have liberty. They can do what I allow them to do. You see what I'm saying? Is that a vivid enough picture of freedom versus liberty? See, I run this. And in essence, them folks run this country. And we can do whatever they allow us to. So that's the difference between freedom and liberty. And they are two different things. And oftentimes we'll say, this is a free country. No, it's not, buddy. It's not a free country. It is a country that has given you a few privileges. Jason Letterfield says nonviolent criminals should never be put in jail. I agree with you 100%, man, because jail is a very horrible place. It's a very horrible place. It's a terrible place. And like I said, I don't know when we took this hard left turn in this country to where we send regular everyday citizens citizens to prison. But the prosecuting attorneys and the district attorneys and the ADAs started treating conviction rates like prize fighters treat their fighting record. And whenever that happened, that's how we ended up in the place that we are now, to where they have monetized the penal institution. Now, judges are running for governors and mayor. Everybody's looking for that next level, go to that next level. The prosecutors want to be judges, and they want to show that they're hard on this, they're hard on that. And I think we've gotten away from what justice is what's supposed to be about. Gotten all the way away from that. Anthony Travis says, in the Constitution, it says that slaves aren't allowed unless they commit a crime, and I'm not going to read the rest of that. But I do see where you're going with that, because there is a is it in the 13th or 14th Amendment where it says that slavery is illegal except for somebody who is in prison. But I think they're moving away from that, the whole chain gang thing and everything like that. Jason Letterfield says, imagine being put in jail for a traffic ticket because you didn't show up to court or pay the fine for an infraction with no victim. It happens all the time, man, and it's a tragedy. It's bogus. To me, it's a slap in the face of what this country is supposed to be about, to what this country touts itself on. You know, so I think that with this whole movement that's going on right now, the civil unrest, that's regardless to whether or not we all agree about police this or police that, regardless to whatever, we have to be able to agree as common everyday men and women that something needs to change on the law enforcement, local politics, federal politics. This country needs a psychic and a paradigm shift. I mean, this country needs to change. Physically, mentally, this country needs to change. And it's not going to happen with those old fogies in Washington who have been down there for years. It's never going to change as long as those people are up there. I've said this before and I'll say it again. We need to have, why do we have millionaires, billionaires running the country? Why do we accept that? We think they're better, they're smarter because of their money. Oftentimes, they didn't make that money by pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. They got that money from their dad, who jacked it. You know, a lot of times that's where these guys got their wealth from. That's where they got their start. They weren't super intelligent. These guys aren't, you know what I mean, like Rhodes Scholars or nothing. Most of them aren't that smart. And I don't like to get into the Donald Trump conversation, just because I've seen people lose friendships on Facebook having a conversation about Donald Trump. But one conversation, I listen to, watch one rally, doesn't take a whole lot of conversation from this guy to know that he ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. He's just bossing out because he has money and power and influence for whatever reason. But I do want to leave my loved ones, my friends, my peeps, my bros, my sisters with this information. It's time to stand up. It's time to be about some real business. It's time to put aside petty grievances. It's time for solidarity amongst the common men and women of this country. It's time for us to stand up. It's time for us to be about something bigger than the Desperate Housewives of Atlanta. No love in hip hop, and Vegas. It's time for us to be about something more. It's time for us to be about substance. It's time for us to stop asking and start taking what we want from those folks. That's not a call to violence or anything like that. I'm talking about putting our man in office, pooling our resources and putting our person up there, pooling our resources and getting somebody who has a cousin in prison, or a nephew or a brother who knows what that's like. It's time for us to put somebody up there who's real, a real person, someone who doesn't get up there and tap dance around questions. Somebody who has the gonads, the testicular fortitude to say, I don't know. I think there's so much power in that sense. Hey man, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. We're going to figure it out though as a country. Look, I'm open to suggestions. I'm one man with a bunch of people with suits around me that I really don't trust. I wish they would get somebody in that seat who is that real to say, look, I don't know, man, and I really don't trust these jokers behind me. I need you guys. There needs to be some transparency. There needs to be some open dialogue, some open conversations. Let's get out there and have these conversations. Let's get the folks who are in power. Let's get their ear. And let's get them to change some of this stuff. Because like I said, it's a tragedy that this country only makes up less than 5% of the world's population, yet it owns 25% of the world's prisoners. There's something terribly wrong with that. And those people don't care because most of them either own a prison or they own stocks in prisons. We need to get those people out of there and get some real people in office. Let's start electing some real people. Let's start right here at the local level. Wherever you are, if you're in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Missouri, start right where you are. Let's start at the local level, getting those folks out of the office. Let's start getting these judges down. Let's get these prosecutors out. These people get elected. We have to elect those judges. And we need to start electing good men, honorable men. And we need to insulate them. Hey, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the information. When I get all the way down to it, I ain't really that smart. I just know some stuff needs to change. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And that should be the rallying cry. My name is Arshawn Wade, a.k.a. The Angry Nerd. Shout out. Peace.